Hey guys, it's Blackjack with 396 guitars. We have the G&L L2000 Series E back on the bench. I've done a lot of work on it, a lot of cleanup. You remember the first video? We're going to dive into this, make a second installment in the video series. Come along for the ride. Let's get to work. Let's see if we can get everything into the movie. So you can see that we have, bear with me, all right, the camera lottery. You can see that we have the neck off. We have cleaned up, dressed the neck and fretboard. We have cleaned up the entire headstock, taken all of the machine out, all of the tuning machines out, cleaned them, polished them to the best that they can possibly be for their age. This is not a 100% go to the ends of the earth restoration, but you can see the difference. We did run into one small little problem right there. If the camera can pick that up, there's a screw missing out of there. Whoever put these tuners on there, and these are not the original tuners, we went over this in the first video. There are extra holes here where they took the old tuners off, the original tuners, I'm assuming, and put these on. There's nothing wrong with these tuners. I don't know why anyone would change them. But whoever owned this guitar clearly was a player and a gigger and a pro, because it has, well, damn, been played a lot. But somebody, I won't mention any names, previous person, whoever worked on this guitar, broke that screw and glued the screw head in there. So the minute I put a screwdriver on it, it popped right out. Now the only way to repair that is to over drill it, take it out, get the stud out, and then fill the hole with a hardwood peg and re-drill it to accept that screw. Now, that all being said, this machine set on this particular type, the nut holds most of the glory hole. It keeps it tight. These little screws here are just to keep it from spinning. It's not going to spin. Everything came together nicely. I cleaned them up and adjusted them. There is actually a tension screw back here. These are good tuners. But for the life of me, who knows in the last 40 years why anybody would change them out. Whoever worked on this guitar didn't know what they were doing. They were grinding with a pick. There's all kinds of little grind marks here. I've run into all sorts of issues on this guitar. It does not turn me off about the instrument. You can see how nicely the headstock cleaned up, barring any checking and age and usage. Nice fretboard. I have my doubts about the frets, but we're going to cross that bridge when we get there. Definitely this guitar was played, and it was played in a professional atmosphere, because there's a lot of work on it. This little checking right here, that's where somebody had their thumbnail sitting there plucking. There's also wear there, down here, over here. So I know he was a thumper and a banger. Right there too, where somebody probably was, you know, slapping and playing. There's a lot of those. I mean, whoever had this guitar worked the daylights out of it. And we've cleaned it up. I have gotten decades of goop. I have cleaned up, took all the magnet screws out, cleaned them and shined them the best that I could, short of completely dismantling everything. We don't need to do that. That's not where we're at here. But I did shine them up a little bit, because there was rust on each screw, magnetic screw pot, the pole pieces. So at least it'll pick up. I've done some work on the electronics. It seems like all the pickups are working. The oh shit button is working. The splitting, the single coil to double coil, humbucker, whatever you want to call it, everything seems to be working. I even am going to donate a couple of jazz bass knobs for it because they were missing. I have one big silver and a couple of black ones on there. It's not correct, but Jesus, this guitar needs some work, and I have done a ton of work on it. What we're going to do today is bolt the neck back on, string it, and just make sure that it makes sound correctly before I go any farther forward for my customer. So stand by, give me a moment. Oh, and I also repaired the battery cover. Where are we? The battery cover was missing a screw, and the screw that it did have didn't quite work right. It took me a little bit, but I sourced a couple of screws for the battery hole. So stand by. I'm going to pause briefly, and then we'll come right back while I bolt this thing together, put the bridge on, put the neck on. Probably we'll put the bridge first, and the neck we're going to put on last. I want to make sure that everything works once the bridge is in as far as the ground goes. Because, you know, that little ground wire goes right underneath there. Stand by. Okay, so here's where we're at. That's the ground wire. Comes through the body. Very similar to a Fender Jazz bass or a P bass. That little ground wire comes up, and when you bolt the bridge back in, it grounds the body. I pulled it out of its little secure pocket that it had worn down in there. That's a common practice, just to make sure that when the bridge goes back on like that it will find a connection. And we're going to go ahead and put a bunch of screws back in this thing. You know my mantra, I do not like to use power tools on these sort of things. I cleaned the entire bridge. I took all the saddles apart, cleaned them, sanded them, used emery cloth, sandpaper, very high grit sandpaper. I just wanted everything to be clean. There was, I don't know, decades of cat hair and dog hair and who knows whose hair down in it. So I'm confident that this thing is going to breathe new life again, and that's what I love. I love to work on old instruments like this that might look a little rough around the edges, but once you get them put back together, it's just nuts and bolts and the basic measurements. Now, when I took the neck out, I backed out the shim, the auto shim that Leo Fender invented and put into this. I backed it out. I don't know if it needs that kind of neck angle, but it's totally adjustable, and that's what it's for. So we're going to start with it almost flush, poking up slightly. I see a lot of, like when this guitar was originally painted, there's a lot of overspray here, and it may not seem like a lot, but that could have been holding the neck up or not allowing it to seat properly. If I can't get it to do what I want it to do, I may go in there and grind that down and then start fresh with whatever adjustment we need to make. But I'm going to string it up today. I'm going to bolt the neck back on. We're going to get the bridge put together, and I'm going to put the neck back on and string it. And we're going to see if it makes noise, because from the previous video, you know that I did a lot of cleanup on it since then. I'm sure the guitar shows better in the video even. And I did some rewiring in here, or repair wiring. There were some things that were a little wonky. There were broken wires. There were all kinds of things going on in there, which is to be expected for a 42-year-old bass guitar. Who knows? This thing has been through the ringer, and I love it. I know I'm going to make this guitar play like $1,000,000. One way or another, I trust Leo's design, and I know that it can be adjusted and made to play properly, play to its highest standard, and adjust correctly so that it can make music again. To reiterate from the first video, this is actually going to be the young person that bought this guitar for $50 online garage sale, call it what you want. He showed his father, and I chatted his dad up, and he took it away from him, and it disappeared the guitar from him, and he tasked me with preparing it to be ready for his birthday in September. I've done probably at least 50% of the work that needs to be done on it so far. Cleaning, wiring, mostly cleaning. I got the neck done first, and we just installed the bridge. So the next thing is going to be to get the neck set again, and this is going to be a mock-up. Just because we're putting the bridge and the neck in today doesn't mean that it's not going to come out at a later date. It may have to. I don't know. But we're going to mock it up, string it up, and really what I want to check is what kind of noise it makes. Without setting it up, I want to make sure, you can plug it in and tap this stuff and check it with a screwdriver, and it makes a crackle through the amp. But until I hook up the strings to it and get it mocked up and, in playing position, I won't know if the electronics are sussed out yet. I'm not willing to bet that they are yet. This is going to be tricky because it does not sit in there super tight. I'm going to pause briefly while I get someone to help me hold the body up while I put the neck plate and the 3 neck screws in, and then that's where we're going to determine whether those neck screws are going to tighten up correctly or not, or if I have to do work in the back of the neck pocket. Stand by. Okay, we got that part. Somebody came and helped me. We're just going to snug these up and see what happens. And it pulls the neck up. I know that the auto shim is sticking out slightly. It was sticking out a lot more when I dismantled the guitar. I don't know why, and I can only assume that it had needed an adjustment at some point in its life, but I'm not going to run with that. Wow, these are tightening up very nicely. Okay. The neck is back installed. Now, if we need to shim the neck and we can't get the proper neck angle, that's where we shim the neck right there. We loosen the screws, and we give a quarter turn, we tighten the screws, and we check everything again. But that's quite a ways down the road. I can see that the neck is sitting very nicely in the pocket. I don't see any major gappage that would make me go, freak out, but there, she's looking like a guitar again. Strings, let me get my favorite winder tool out. Now these are the kind that the string lives here, the string goes down in, and then you start to wrap down. You don't have to worry about locking it, because as it goes in there and you bend it around, it locks itself in. But I still line them up so that sometimes you get lucky and all the tuners line up, but very rarely on this type of guitar. Let me get my string winder. I've got so many projects in the shop right now. Eventually we're going to get back to our Telecaster build, our solo Telecaster build. It's been, the paint and the clear coat has been drying, patiently waiting for me to get back to it for a couple of weeks. And sometimes that's how projects go. Today's string of choice is Diodario's. These are EXL 160 TPs. I used to use these all the time. They're not bad strings at all. I just found better strings that I like, but they're a little expensive. So for our purposes here, and I'm not 100% that once I string this up that I might have to take these strings off again. and start over. So I didn't want to go with super expensive strings just yet. It's going to live there. Same rule. It's going to live here. It comes through, runs over the saddle. 1, 2. We're going to go 2 pegs. And these you cut off because it's going to dip down in there. You don't overwind them. And lock them in like on a guitar. I have found that 2 is usually enough to measure 1, 2. Start and wind, and again the same rule applies. Every wind needs to go down from the initial wind. Almost 3 winds on there. That's the E string. It's been so long since I put a set of Diodarios on. And the bass, brass, red. Brass is E, red is A. 1, 2, a little bit past. Something ain't happening there. I don't like that. Let's get that string at least. Try to get it there. There we go. Wrap that girl like it's supposed to be. Pretty good break angle. This headstock is actually not as sharp an angle as my fenders. What you do, Leo, you change it a little bit. EAD is black. Of course, they're all wound together. Thank you for that. Back, EAD. We're riding in our saddles. Same kind of string tree setup as on a fender. I'm just going to stick the whole thing in there. I've worked on so many guitars lately, I forgot how to string up a bass almost. Get on there. I'm not crazy about these tuners. I don't know what kind of tuners they are, but What do you want me to do? Put some oil on there? There we go. Of course, much better brake angle over here because we have a string tree to deal with. It'll help us out. Wow. Yeah, we're getting some goony goo goo going there. Maybe that's why they had that thing. It looks like we're a mile away down there at the bottom end over here. That's probably why they had that auto shim kicking it up. Not impressed with that, but it is a 42-year-old guitar, and we did have a whole bunch torn apart on this guitar. Again, this exercise today is just to check out electronics. Everything's in the saddles. The strings are right over the pole pieces. That's a good sign. Everything looks good as far as string spacing on the fretboard. Let us just see where our tuning is, and we're going to take some sound checks is what we're going to do. Well, we're getting a signal to the tuner. I have my tuner here on the bench. Come on, let's get up to D. Got some buzzing. Of course, everything's out of whack on this guitar. We got a lot of work to do still. What we're just checking for is the big reveal here to see if electronics are working. I'm just going to sight down this. Oh my goodness! That neck is like, wow! We're going to have to tighten that girl up. And we're definitely going to have to shim the neck up with the auto shim. Let us just check first if we're getting the right kind of sound that we're hoping for, because that's what this exercise is really for. Got a wonky plug there. Probably just corroded and dirty. Clean that up. I know that's probably sounding like terrible noise up there. Something going on with the A string. We don't have a good brake angle here, and like I said, so one thing we have to do is put the battery in. Let's see if the active. Let's turn it this way so we don't put any weight on those toggle switches. the battery in. I had to go source a couple of screws for this because, well, yeah, I know, they were missing. Cover comes off. Pretty self-explanatory. Battery goes in, and that activates our onboard preamp, which Leo was a proponent of, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he was, if he didn't invent it, I think he was one of the people that made it better. I don't like them. I've never believed in onboard electronics in a guitar. Whatever that does, you can do it through your amplifier, but that's just me. Never cared for onboard electronics. Preamps wired into your guitar. Your guitar is an instrument meant to play music, not to be an amplifier. Your amplifier is what your guitar plugs into, if you're getting my meaning. So we have the battery in. The battery operates and powers up the onboard preamp. Let's see if that circuit is working before we can move forward. Oh yeah. So this red button, I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but it's red. That turns on your active circuit. This is your pickup selector, which means it's in that position and it shuts off the bridge. That shuts off the neck and turns on the bridge pickup. In the middle, they're both on. This changes your coils in your, it basically rewires your coils on board from series or humbuckers to single coil. And then your oh shit button. That's your active. Sounds like it's making noise. You gotta fix the jack. So we know all the electronics are working, and that is exactly why I went through this process today. We are not setting any of the setup in this guitar today. After all the work that we did in repairing broken wires, getting the onboard electronics to work, and the cleanup that we've done so far, because you remember the first video, it looked like a cat died on this thing and left all its hair and part of its carcass. So we took all the bridge apart. We cleaned up all the pole pieces on the humbuckers. We did a lot of work on the neck and took the headstock apart. We still have a repair to do here, which we went over in the first video. There is a chip out repair that somebody had done in the past, a previous repair. There is a gap there. When I get my bionic eyes on, I can see that there's still a crevice there. and the chip actually is higher than the rest of the board. So I'm going to have to get in there, inject some glue boost or CA glue in there, and then sand it down so that it's level and even so that it won't ever pop out of there again. And then, well, damn, because now we can't only drive a car, we could drive a tractor trailer under the string action on it. But I know that all of that can be adjusted. String height, action in the neck, the neck relief, and even if we have to shim the neck, Leo thought of everything. He gave us right there, you put an Allen wrench in there and you can shim the neck by loosening these screws and shim up the neck to change your neck angle according to whatever adjustments we need. That makes life a lot easier and a lot simpler, especially with an instrument that's this old, because shimming the neck is not abnormal. It is not out of the realm of possibility and things that need to be done, because wood shrinks over time and tolerances open up, and sometimes you have to, like on, say, one of my guitars doesn't have that auto shim capability. I would have to take a piece of hardwood shim and actually pop the neck off, like we had just had this one off, and put a shim in there to change that angle so that the angle of the guitar bends over slightly, and what it effectively does is brings the neck up closer to the strings. Now, I'm sure that we can get this thing adjusted properly. We know we have to suss out what's going on with our output jack, but that is such a common thing. I can look in there with a flashlight and see I should have probably done that already. There's green goony goo goo crap in there, and that green stuff just tells me that it's corrosion, mold, and mildew. You get in there with a little bit of emery cloth, clean that up, and she'll be as good as new. That way, when we plug something in there, it will not crackle and carry on like that. I did source a couple of knobs. We got the one knob that it came with. I am extremely happy that all the electronics are working. I may, against my better judgment, pop this open and secure. When I opened it up, the actual circuit board and onboard preamp is just flopping around in there. It has to be turned and oriented in the right way so that it doesn't ground against the control panel cover, which is metal, and the bottom of the cavity, which is also grounded and has metal in it. So originally they came with some styrofoam around them and a zip tie. That's the way they did it, so that if it bounces around in there a little bit, okay, no problem, but at least it won't ground out on something. So that repair was done correctly. I might open that up and try to secure that better. But from there, we are moving on to showing the customer the progress that we've made. And even in the video, I love the way that this thing looks in the video, because it doesn't look like it just came out of a dumpster like it did in the first video. And I'm going to show this to him tomorrow to let him know where we are and where we stand and what we need to do to go forward and finish the guitar, which now is basically just the setup, and that's going to be the third video. Blackjack with 396 guitars. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for playing along. We'll talk to you soon.